So we know of suspects. We have Mr. Pinkowski and that Mr. Bent, who we don't know anything about. But what we need to figure out is why? Why are they doing this? What is it for? So let's see if we find that out. Chapter 9. The kids crossed Thistle Court and headed toward Fox Lane. There were only 3 small houses on the narrow lane. The last one was a cottage nearly hidden in trees and thick bushes. Somewhere a bird let out a single chirp. Josh nudged Dink. "The car!" he whispered, pointing. The same black car was parked under a tree. The license plate said, Bent. The kids snuck up to the car. All 3 peered through a rear window. There was no Happy Heart dog food box on the car's seat or floor. "He must have taken it into the house," Dink said, crouching down next to Josh and Ruth Rose. "Now what do we do?" Josh asked. "We could try getting inside the house," Ruth Rose said. Josh looked at her. "How? What if we ring the bell and say we're selling Girl Scout cookies?" Josh rolled his eyes. "You're right. 2 boys selling Girl Scout cookies? Okay, then, I'll do it alone," Ruth Rose said. "No way," Dink said. "No one's going into that house. If the Bents are the counterfeiters, they're dangerous." "So what do we do?" Josh asked. "I sure could use a sandwich." Suddenly the front door opened. A short-legged hound dog with floppy ears waddled out onto the porch. The dog was brown and white with big, sad eyes. "Stay near the house, Shorty," a voice said. "Uh-oh," Josh whispered. "Let's get out of here before he smells us," Ruth Rose said. The kids melted into the thick shrubbery growing wild on both sides of the cottage. They crept toward the backyard, trying to be as quiet as possible. "Look," Dink said, pointing to a small garage at the very back of the property. Except for the door, the garage was surrounded by bushes. "We can hide in there." Just then the dog let out a howl. Ruth Rose looked over her shoulder. "Oh no, he's after us." The kids sprinted behind the garage. Dink found a low window. "In here," he said, shoving the window sash up. The dog came loping around the corner with its nose to the ground. "Nice doggy," Josh whispered. The hound looked at Josh and let out another howl. "Quick, inside," Dink said. He dove through the open window. Josh and Ruth Rose piled into the garage on top of Dink. Outside, the dog started barking. Dink saw its black snout and eyes peeking over the sill. He shoved Josh off him and closed the window. The dog was still barking. It scratched at the window with its big feet. "We have to hide," Dink said. "The Bents are bound to hear all that noise." The kids quickly looked around. Against one wall, a workbench was piled with junk. Dink noticed a tarp-covered mound opposite the bench. Josh and Ruth Rose dove under the bench. Dink headed for the tarp. He lifted one edge, crawled underneath, and let the tarp drop over his back. It was dark under the tarp. Dink couldn't see a thing. He found himself sprawled on top of several hard boxes with sharp edges. Suddenly, the dog stopped barking. Dink thought he heard a human voice. He lifted a corner of the tarp and peeked toward the window. Through the dirty glass, Dink saw a woman's legs. She bent down, picked up the dog, and carried him out of sight. Barely breathing, Dink waited until he felt sure the woman wasn't coming back. Then he crawled out from under the tarp. On the other side of the garage, Josh and Ruth Rose came out from under the bench. "That was close," Ruth Rose said. Dink looked around. They were standing on a cement floor. The air was cool and dry. In one corner stood gardening tools and a few fishing poles. Then Dink spotted something. "Look," he said. On top of the workbench sat a Happy Heart dog food box. "Maybe it's the one Mr. Bent had in his car," Dink said. He yanked open the box flaps. Inside, he found only a paint can with green smears on its sides. Dink thought for a minute. "Guys, remember that boat Mr. P was working on? It was green, right?" He held up the paint can. "Maybe the boat belongs to Mr. Bent and Ron painted it for him. This could be the leftover paint." "Then the check Mr. Bent gave him was to pay for the paint job," Ruth Rose said. She reached into the box and pulled out a wadded ball of paper. She flattened it on the workbench. It's a receipt from the pharmacy, Ruth Rose said, for 3 bottles of calamine lotion. Dink stared at the receipt. It was from a credit card. Neatly printed on the bottom of the piece of paper was the name Ronald W. Pinkowski. Hey guys, check this out. Josh had been poking around the other side of the garage. Hanging on wall pegs were 2 pairs of long green wading boots. Josh unhooked one pair and took it down. Look at the size of this foot, he said. Dink walked over for a closer look. These must be what made those big footprints, he said. Ruth Rose examined the bottom of one of the boots. Wedged into the treads were tiny pebbles and sand. The kids stared at each other. Now what do we do? Josh asked. Now we go tell Officer Fallon what we found, Dink said. He tiptoed over to the garage door and peeked through a crack. Uh-oh, Dink said. We're in trouble, guys. Mrs. Bent just brought out some food. She's lighting the grill. Great, Josh muttered, and I'm stuck in here starving to death. He and Ruth Rose joined Dink at the crack. Look, Ruth Rose said. A tall man walked up to the grill. It was the man they'd seen at Ron's bait shop, but now he was wearing shorts and a t-shirt. His long arms and legs were blotched with calamine lotion.